Welcome back to Gold Rush Reporter, where we dig deep into the world of gold, silver, and everything that moves the precious metals market. I'm your silver analyst, and today's topic is something every stacker and investor should hear. When you hear a sales pitch like the one I'm about to describe, whether it's coming from a precious metals trader or your friendly neighborhood coin shop, my advice is simple. Just walk away. And today, we're going to talk about why. Recently, one of our community members left a comment on one of my videos, and his story really caught my attention. It's one of those real-world lessons that remind you how easily people can get taken advantage of if they don't stay alert. He explained a situation that happened at his local coin shop, and I'll read his story word for word later. But first, let me set the stage for you. Because what happened to him isn't just about silver. It's about common sense and understanding when someone's trying to take you for a ride. The truth is, sometimes common sense doesn't help when you're stuck in a tough position, when you need to sell fast, or when life hits you with something unexpected. That's when you become vulnerable. And that's exactly what happened in this case. He was dealing with constitutional silver, those 90% silver coins we often talk about. But honestly, the same thing could happen with any kind of silver, whether it's bullion, rounds, or junk silver. This isn't just about precious metals. Whether you're buying silver, gold, or anything of value, you've got to check the dealer's reputation before doing business. Always. I tell people all the time to get to know their local coin shops. It's crucial, not only because it helps you find great deals, but because it builds a relationship of trust. You'll know who's fair, who's honest, and who will look out for your best interests. Believe me, those kinds of dealers still exist. Some dealers, like Summit Metals, have built their name on being straightforward and fair with customers. That's the kind of place you want to deal with, not the ones that twist the truth to make a quick buck. Now, back to the story. Our viewer, Timothy Meyer, said that his local coin shop offered him 17 times face value for his 90% silver. 17 times face value. That's way below the market rate. Seriously underpriced. At first glance, that might not seem like a huge red flag, because right now, refiners are overwhelmed and not accepting much constitutional silver. There are a lot of shops out there paying below spot price because they're stuck waiting to move inventory. So yes, under certain market conditions, lower offers might seem understandable. But this case goes deeper than that. The shop tried to justify the lowball offer by saying, well, the dollar is strong right now, silver's dropping, and prices will fall even more by year end. That's when I knew something wasn't right. The value of the dollar and the price of silver fluctuate all the time. No one can predict them with certainty, not even the so-called experts. But this store acted like it was a done deal, as if they had inside knowledge of silver's future price. That's a major red flag. And it's where we'll pick up in the next part, when Timothy realizes just how far this coin shop was willing to go to justify a bad deal. Have you ever been in a similar situation where a dealer gave you an offer that felt off? Let me know in the comments because your experiences could help others avoid the same mistake. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dig into the coin shop's reasoning and how this strong dollar excuse was used to manipulate the deal. When I read further into Timothy's story, things started to make more sense, but not in a good way. The coin shop owner told him that the dollar's recent surge made the lower silver price reasonable. In his words, the value of the dollar was rising and silver was falling, so this was supposedly a fair deal. Now, while it's true that the dollar and silver often move in opposite directions, that logic only goes so far. The problem is when a dealer starts using that as a cover to justify paying you less than your silver is worth. That's not smart business. That's manipulation. While Timothy was there, the shop owner continued insisting that silver would fall below $38 by the end of the year. When I heard that, I couldn't help but shake my head. First of all, no one knows where silver will go by the end of the year. Analysts, traders, and even big institutions get it wrong all the time. Markets move based on so many unpredictable factors, from central bank policies to industrial demand to geopolitical tensions. So, when a small shop owner claims to have that kind of foresight, it should raise every red flag possible. Timothy also mentioned something that really stood out to me. The store walls were covered with photos of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Now, I don't care who's in the picture, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. Politics should never mix with your business ethics. Displaying political preferences in a coin shop that deals with people's money just creates bias. It sends the wrong message to customers and could easily affect how they're treated. Whether the photos were of Donald Trump or any other politician, it's simply unprofessional and irrelevant to the business at hand. What makes this story even more surprising is that the shop owner seemed convinced that silver would indeed hit $38 by December. Think about that. He was betting on it as if he knew the future. The problem isn't that he believed it. The problem is that he was making decisions with his customers' assets based on that belief. That's bad advice, plain and simple. When you're running a coin shop, your job is to give fair market value, not gamble with someone else's silver. The truth is, the shop owner probably wasn't acting out of pure greed. He was scared. Many dealers right now are struggling to move silver because refiners are backed up, and some won't take constitutional silver at all. When that happens, dealers face pressure. They can't easily flip their inventory, and that fear turns into hesitation or lowballing offers. Instead of being honest with Timothy and saying, "Hey, I can't move this silver right now. Refiners aren't buying," he tried to sound confident and justify a bad price with fake reasoning about the dollar. He could have easily said, "Look, I'll need to pay you less because of the refining backlog," and Timothy probably would have understood. But that's not what happened. Instead, the dealer claimed that silver's value would crash soon and used that to push for a cheaper purchase. That's where honesty ends and exploitation begins. Now, I do want to make one thing clear. Not every coin shop behaves this way. There are still plenty of good dealers out there who'll give you a fair shake, even in tough markets. But stories like this remind us that you need to know who you're dealing with before you sell your metals. Sometimes a little patience and comparison shopping can make all the difference. We'll continue this in the next part, where I'll explain how Timothy's personal situation forced him into selling and how that desperation made him an easy target for a deal he should never have accepted. Timothy's situation took a more personal turn when he explained why he had to sell his silver in the first place. It wasn't about profit or timing the market, it was about necessity. He had unexpected medical bills that needed to be paid immediately, and selling his 90% silver was the only way to raise cash quickly. And this is where many people can relate, because when real-life emergencies hit, your investment decisions stop being about market strategy and start being about survival. That's when people get cornered, and unfortunately, some dealers take advantage of that vulnerability. Timothy ended up accepting around 14 times face value for his silver. Now, if you follow silver prices, you know that's extremely low. But to him, it was enough to cover his medical costs and stabilize his finances, at least temporarily. From his perspective, it was a necessary move. From the dealer's perspective, it was a profitable one. The problem isn't that Timothy sold, it's that the shop owner used misleading reasoning to justify that low offer instead of being transparent about the market situation. If the dealer had simply said, "Look, refiners aren't buying right now, so liquidity is tight, and this is the best I can do," that would have been fair. But claiming that the dollar's strength or future silver price was the reason to pay less, that crosses the line. Honesty and respect should be the foundation of any precious metals transaction. When someone's desperate, it's not the time to use fancy explanations or market jargon to confuse them. It's the time to be straightforward. What really frustrates me as an analyst is that the store owner wasn't entirely wrong about one thing. He was facing challenges too. Refiners refusing to take silver, premiums fluctuating, and the constant balancing act of maintaining inventory all create pressure for small coin shops. But that doesn't justify taking advantage of customers who trust you. If he couldn't move the silver or had to hedge his position, he could have explained that openly. Instead, he built a narrative that painted him as the expert and the customer as someone who didn't understand the market. That's where integrity goes out the window. Timothy, on the other hand, didn't have much choice. He knew he wasn't getting a good deal, but he was forced to take it because his health came first. And I can respect that. Sometimes you just have to do what's necessary to get through the moment. But his story is a reminder to every stacker out there. Don't let yourself get into a position where you have to sell your metals out of desperation. Your silver and gold are supposed to be your financial insurance, not something you liquidate under pressure. That's why I always say, prepare for the worst before it happens. Have a small emergency fund in cash so you don't have to part with your metals when the market isn't in your favor. Because if you ever need to sell in a rush, chances are you won't get fair value. And sadly, there will always be someone ready to take advantage of that urgency. In Timothy's case, yes, he managed to pay his bills, and that's what truly matters. But it's also a harsh lesson in how quickly your silver can lose its real-world value if you're not in control of the timing. Inflation, dealer markups, and refining slowdowns can all work against you when you need liquidity. The same silver that's your protection in a crisis can become a burden if you're forced to sell it under stress. In the next part, we'll look at what happened after Timothy's sale, how the dealer handled the silver afterward, and what lessons we can all learn from this unfortunate but eye-opening experience. After Timothy sold his silver, things unfolded exactly as you'd expect. The coin shop owner, satisfied with the deal, ended up making a solid profit from that transaction. He later admitted that he had purchased silver when the price was around $16 an ounce, which means he wasn't really losing anything. In fact, he was doing quite well. From a financial perspective, it made sense for him. But morally, it's a different story. The issue here isn't whether the dealer made money. It's how he made it. Taking advantage of someone's urgent need is never justifiable, especially when you're in a position of knowledge and trust. When you run a coin shop, you're not just a business owner, you're part of a community. People come to you with their savings, their investments, their hopes for financial security. They trust you to give them a fair deal, not to exploit their circumstances. In this case, the dealer should have shown some empathy. He could have said, "Look, I can't pay full market value, but let me get you closer to spot, so it's fair for both of us." Instead, he used market excuses to justify an unfair offer. And that's where professionalism and compassion should have stepped in. What's even more concerning is that the dealer seemed to believe he had done the right thing. He told Timothy that he was satisfied, that the transaction helped him manage his finances, and that it was simply business. But business doesn't have to mean being heartless. There's a big difference between protecting your profit margin and taking advantage of someone's desperation. The best dealers understand that repeat business and trust are worth more than a one-time gain. Timothy realized after the fact that the dealer's reasoning didn't add up. The rising dollar story was just a convenient way to underpay him. And the claim that silver would fall below $38 turned out to be baseless. There was no major drop, no disaster in the silver market, just the same short-term fluctuations we see all the time. The dealer didn't have special insight. He was simply making up a justification to get silver cheaply. That's not market intelligence. That's manipulation. Now, I want to be fair here. Not every coin shop is like that. There are plenty of honest, hard-working dealers out there who genuinely care about their customers. Many of them will even lose a bit of profit to help someone out in need, because they understand that relationships matter more than short-term margins. But unfortunately, for every honest dealer, there's at least one who will see desperation as an opportunity. And that's the kind of thinking that gives this entire industry a bad reputation. When we look at this situation from a broader perspective, it highlights a bigger truth about silver and precious metals in general. Silver isn't just an investment, it's a form of wealth protection. It's something people hold to secure their purchasing power when inflation eats away at fiat currency. But that protection only works if you can hold on to it. When people are forced to sell during tough times, they lose that security. That's why I always emphasize the importance of preparation and liquidity. Keep some cash aside for emergencies, so you're not forced to sell your metals when the market or your situation isn't favorable. In Timothy's case, he walked away from that transaction with mixed feelings. He got the money he needed, but he also knew he'd been shortchanged. Still, he tried to understand the dealer's side, realizing that small businesses are struggling too. But even then, he couldn't ignore the feeling that he had been treated unfairly. And honestly, he's right to feel that way. In the next and final part, we'll wrap this story up. I'll explain what this experience teaches all of us about protecting our silver, how to spot manipulation before it happens, and the key habits that can keep you from becoming the next Timothy Meyer. In the end, Timothy's story is more than just a single bad transaction. It's a reminder for everyone in the silver community. It shows how quickly things can go wrong when desperation meets dishonesty. The coin shop owner didn't set out to ruin anyone, but he crossed the moral line by using misleading arguments instead of honesty. Timothy, on the other hand, was simply caught in a situation where he needed cash fast, and that urgency cost him far more than it should have. He sold his 90% silver under pressure. And while it solved his immediate problem, it also became a painful lesson about trust and awareness in the precious metals world. What really matters here is what we can learn from this. First, never assume that every coin dealer has your best interest at heart. Most are fair and honest, but some will use market excuses, fancy terminology, or emotional pressure to push you into a bad deal. Always do your own research, know the market price, know the melt value of your silver, and don't be afraid to walk away if something doesn't feel right. The best protection a silver stacker has isn't just their metal, it's knowledge. Second, always prepare for emergencies before they happen. Keep some cash on hand so you don't have to sell your metals at the worst possible time. Remember, silver and gold are your hedge against uncertainty. They're not meant to be your emergency fund. When you're forced to sell under pressure, it's almost impossible to get a fair price. You end up paying for that decision twice. Once when you sell low, and again when inflation eats away at the dollars you receive. Lastly, and this is crucial, build relationships with trustworthy dealers. Visit multiple coin shops, talk to different sellers, and get a sense of who treats you fairly and who doesn't. A reputable dealer won't pressure you, won't make wild price predictions, and won't use fear tactics. They'll explain the market honestly, even if that means admitting they can't offer you top value that day. That kind of honesty is worth far more than a few extra dollars on a single transaction. Timothy's experience might have been unfortunate, but it's one that every investor and stacker can learn from. He didn't lose everything. He gained awareness. And that awareness can save someone else from making the same mistake. The silver market, like any other, runs on trust. Once that trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. But by staying informed, asking questions, and knowing when to walk away, you can protect yourself from being taken advantage of. So, to everyone watching, stay sharp, stay patient, and always think before you sell. Your silver represents more than just metal. It represents your time, effort, and foresight. Don't let anyone undervalue that. Thank you for sticking around till the end of this video. And a special thanks again to Timothy Meyer for sharing his story. It's stories like these that help others make smarter decisions. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Gold Rush Reporter, where we break down the real stories behind silver and gold. Until next time, this is your silver analyst signing off. Stay safe, stay smart, and keep stacking.